I was thinking it was the other Eva. No, but you're right, you're right.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the Kane County Human Services Committee for 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Allen. Garcia. Garcia here. Right?
Right here.
Lewis is not here. Tarver.
Carver's here remotely.
Linder.
Linder here.
Sturgis.
Present. We would like to ask for approval for our online individuals. In this case, I think Mr. Tarver. Bill is online. Are we okay with that?
Yep.
All right, we have consensus. Mr. Roth has just joined us.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes. Can we accept a unanimous request there?
Linder make a unanimous request to approve the minutes of November 12th.
Thank you, Mike. We need a roll call on that or all in favor? Or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So much. I don't know that we have any public comment either online or in person. So with that, we are graced with Kathy Hopkinson from Finance, who will, so our reports are not online. She is going to actually give us a quick update. I'm sorry, they are online, but she's going to give us a quick update on the health insurance
Fund.
Yeah. And Kath, I'm going to challenge you to just explain briefly for our new members here, Sonia and John, what that fund is and exactly how we monitor it. And Jamie, feel free to jump in at any point.
So the county established a separate fund, and it is funded by, the source of revenue for this fund is all the employee and employer contributions from all the other funds across the county. So when we do our budget, for example, in our general fund and our health department fund and our transportation department funds, they budget the employer contribution portion of the health and dental benefits that then is transferred into this special health insurance fund, along with the employee deductions, which comes out of people's payroll. And then the county is self-insured, and Jamie probably could talk a little bit more about that. So then we pay our health and dental insurance bills out of this special health insurance fund. So the revenue is all the employee and employer contributions. And then the expenses are all of our Blue Cross Blue Shield, et cetera, bills come out of this fund.
So Kathy, Jamie will give us an update in her department management reports on those. But these are fund balances.
Right.
And so this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, but that's okay. Let's get Kathy back to her office.
So I have one slide.
Okay.
Because we just always want to keep our eye on this. So we've got, this is our health insurance fund. This is 2022 and 23 actual and 24 actual to date. 24 should be pretty close to final. I don't know that there's any more bills. There might be one or two that need to be posted. So you can see up there the total revenues, the total expenses, the difference between the revenues and the expenses, and then our fund balance. And we've talked a lot about our fund balance in other funds. And over the years, we've also talked about how we need to maintain somewhere between 25 and 50% fund balance in this health insurance fund for the sort of the catastrophic event that might happen someday, or and Jamie could probably talk more about those details. I'm just going to talk about the numbers. But the current fund balance at the end of 24 is about $9.3 million. So that is excess revenues that have built up over the years. And we would like to, the county would like to, as we manage this fund balance in this fund, have a targeted fund balance somewhere between 25 and 50% of expenditures. So if you do the math on that, 25% of our total expenses for each of those years would be as displayed. So 5 million for 24. 50% of expenses would be 10 million. So we're at 9. So we're getting close to having at least 50% of our expenses. So I'm just pointing that out today. And the growth of our fund balance from 22 to 23, that fund balance grew 16%. From 23 to 24, it grew 26%.
Kath, if I can jump in here just to give a little bit of context. Jamie, do you remember the name of the consortium? What was that? What was the group that we were with? before?
IPBC.
Illinois.
It's not Illinois, it's Intergovernmental Personnel Benefits Collective or Cooperative. I think.
Cooperative. So it was this big group that managed all of our health insurance for us, that we paid them, blah, 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 blah. We made the conscious choice several years back, 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that we would like to pull from that group and we could do it ourselves because there was enough technology available for us to do it. When we made that pull, you will see in the reports, John and Sonia, that we do pay premiums to health carriers because there's a catastrophic stopgap loss here and they help manage our claims. Now, at the time we took and made and pulled from the consortium and went on our own, we set a reserve target. What did we use? Really scientific? Nothing. We pulled it out of the air. We went with the best guess that we could with what we thought would be appropriate. And we rose to meet that target, which I think was maybe $9 million.
It was
Ish.
9 at the time was the
Yeah.
target.
But that target was based on industry practices. It wasn't a real scientific thing. Over the years, upon reaching that target, over the years, this money, Kathy, to the best of my knowledge, is not money that if we want to move this back to the general fund, we can do this. This money has to stay here. And the argument that we have to always be inconsiderate of is that the unions and the employees could come back and say, we're paying too much for our health insurance because you're charging us too much to the reserve account. So we need to adjust that reserve occasionally to make sure that we're not artificially affecting rates. Am I even remotely close?
You are. And the way we adjust that reserve balance is in setting the rates for the next year. So if we want to drop our reserve balance, we would actually drop our rates a little below our expected payout. And then that money would come from reserve. So that's how we adjust. So if we want to set a target, and we've never set a formal target other than that between 25 and 50%. But as you can see, that's a pretty wide range. If the committee or the board wants to set a specific target, then we would just use those figures each year when we set rates. It's a calculation that we do based on expectations of growth of the next year, number of employees that are in the fund. We get information from Blue Cross. Our broker helps with this, with what we expect to be our payout in the next year based on trends. The longer we do this, the more data we have to review, and we're getting better and better at our setting our estimates. So if we want to bring that fund balance down, we just use that as a part of our calculation in determining what we want our rates to be for the next year.
Have
But
you
we
and
can't take,
Kathy,
like you said, we can't take that money out of that fund because it is a mix of county and employee contributions. So you can't move it from that fund, for example, back to the general fund.
have you and Kathy discussed where that balance is? And do you have a recommendation of where you think it should be?
I think as part of the, I mean, we're getting closer to the top of what we would like our target fund balance to be, I think is part of the 2026 budgeting process and looking at the forecasted expenses. I mean, that's something to take a look at.
Okay, and when do we review when we set these rates for our employees?
We start meeting with the brokers about this time of year. So we'll start in February, meeting with the brokers to look at trends and start getting quotes. This usually.
Deadline being,
So this usually comes first draft to the committee around April.
Okay.
We have to pass rates no later than July to make sure that we have them in time to get them to our open enrollment provider and get our open enrollment set up. So one thing to keep in mind, this balance isn't just for catastrophic things. It's to, we are billed a month in arrears. So when we look at the bills, you will find that they are a full month behind. So we're billed after incurred. So we need to have funds to cover what we've already done. And then there's what Mike Baker has talked about before. There's the IBNR, that's the incurred but not yet received. We have a pretty high number for that because we will accept claims from providers up to 6 months after they are incurred. So we are responsible to pay those for that time period after we have collected premiums. So when you look at the 24 to actual date figure, that's correct. And that's what we've been billed to date. There aren't any still outstanding bills that we have to pay. However, we have incurred expenses in our health plan that we will not receive a bill for until up to 6 months later.
can't just turn it off.
You can't
It
turn it off.
lingers
Correct.
and, it's there. So does anybody have any questions on, John?
3 questions, I think. First of all, it sounds as though, and I don't know who I should ask, but I'll just ask.
We're a team.
Yeah, yes, of course. So it sounds as though there's an aggregate stop loss of some kind. So I'm trying to understand, we're responsible for paying the first X. And then I'm assuming this, then there's a stop loss at that point that would cover us from X to maybe anything or X to Y. And then we're also responsible for Y up to total world meltdown.
John, we'll get you that information in that if we can send out to the newer members, send it to everybody, that quote sheet that came out from the carriers, I think would be excellent to look at that and explains their responsibilities, our responsibilities, the different pricings that come in. We're talking about 16 to 18 million dollars that gets spent on this. So, oh, you're human services, you're the silly committee. I got news for you. This is a huge lift on this. And if we get it wrong, it affects everybody, minutia, employees' children. I mean, you don't understand. This is so important. So, I think that will be of huge
That-
benefit to
that
you
should
to
do it.
visually see that.
Okay, question 2. I've noticed that the increases in the total revenues for the plan and total expenses were about 7%. Now they're trending towards 11-ish, depending upon which one of the balances. I'm curious, when you do budgeting or forecasting, and again, I'm just throwing it out, what percentage you're using for what I would refer to as healthcare inflation.
So our broker is an expert in the industry and does come and bring us that market research for what healthcare inflation is expected for the next year. And it's heavily based on what Blue Cross is predicting for their own markets in Illinois. So it does change every year based on the market research for that year. And our source is our broker, Assured Partners.
Do you know what the current number is?
We have not begun evaluating for
About
next year.
last year's number.
I would have to
Oh,
look. I would hate to misstate it, but I can go
Does
back and look.
6% sound?
It does. I think it was 5.5 or 6%.
5.5 to 6?
Yeah, I've seen it as high as 25,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, so
was
Sonia,
less
what
than
are you
10.
seeing?
For
6% sounds kind of low
Yeah.
to me. Yeah, I'd say 11 to 12 to 15 maybe, because healthcare costs for a lot of reasons are just doing that. So
Right.
they're not
So
increasing.
John, coming out of COVID, when you self-manage, it's a little bit different critter.
Yep.
But the COVID numbers, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
And then coming out of COVID, my question to Jamie was always, are we like even close back to historical? And she would say, historical. I mean, okay, I answered. So yeah, we'll take a look at it and would love for you guys to participate and
Yep.
meet the broker.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Sonia, my third question is maybe an easy one for somebody. We all don't have our healthcare cards yet. And I know that's not anybody at the county's fault. I was just curious, oh, they just came? They're coming now.
They were
Excellent.
supposed to be mailed last week. So you should get it. They can be pulled up online, and if you don't have an account, let us know. We can pull one up for you online.
Oh,
if you need
Jamie, let
something.
her answer. Don't let her skate.
I can print you one off.
Oh, no, that's not, I'm just, thank you.
Welcome, Christine.
Thank you.
So-
I just want to go ahead and make a comment that absolutely right. The data is super, super important after COVID. I think everybody will learn. It's a new beginning, right? All the data that we had before, it's just not the right data. So it's the new beginning. So it will be wonderful if we can see those numbers, because I'm with John, especially with the healthcare. It's just different data that we have prior to COVID, different data and different ways that people is
We are
now-
super excited to have both of you because the committees all run differently. This is an extremely casual, bring your knowledge, ask the question because we can't get this wrong. It's not like you're saying, hi, do you want, 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive? I mean, it's not black and white. Some of this is what we've heard from our, employees. How many employees? 1,300 employees. Well, golly, plus all of their family, plus all of the dependents. And now you're starting, plus the retirees, plus all of a sudden you can't have enough eyes on this. And while we think we do a great job, that's looking in the mirror. We would love somebody from outside to be able to look and say, participate and make us better. Mike, is that fair?
Very much so.
Yeah, so. Any other questions on this? Can we release Kathy? Thank you so much. Before we go on, Mr. State's Attorney, Assistant State's Attorney, are you here for the next committee as well? Okay, so you can stay. We don't need to get you out. And judge people from that end, are you here for this at all? Do you need anything? Super duper, thank you. Item number 7. I'm sorry, for 6A, monthly financial reports are on file. For number 7, Kathy, thank you so much for coming in. If she's already left, I apologize. Item 7, Jamie, why don't you come up and walk us through, and again, for 2025, I have asked that Jamie and Christine not feel that they are members of the audience, but they are at the table participating, concurrent with other committees. And so welcome. Deb, thank you for coming in this morning. I know it's cold out. But Jamie, why don't you go ahead and walk us through?
Okay, if we can go to the monthly Blue Cross Blue Shield invoice, which is on page 15. So we do include the invoice that we pay to Blue Cross each year for the committee's review. This month is about 1.6 million. That's fairly normal. We usually fluctuate between 1.3, 1.7, or 1.8. So it's right in where it belongs. It's within tolerance. We usually don't go into too much detail on these unless you guys have questions. So as you can see, these are the bill due in January is for November charges. So we are a full month in arrears on those. The next slide is page 18. This is our enrollment numbers. So we have over 1,000 employees, 424 spouses, 718 dependents. So that is the total number of individuals participating in our health plan. And then there's the medical expense reimbursement plan. We do have another 77 people participating in that. We did make changes to that plan last year, concurrent with some IRS guidance. And so
Tony
most
and John,
people
do you
stayed on
understand
it.
what MERP is? You got it? Okay.
So the majority of people stayed on the plan. Even though there were some changes, we're no longer reimbursing premiums that they pay to their other plan. And for the vast majority of people, I think only one or two people decided to no longer participate and go to the county's insurance instead.
And as we begin looking at those first two items, for this enrollment period, we had listened to our employees, and there was the notion of maybe offering a higher deductible plan and a health savings plan. Has that window opened and closed, and did we have any participants for it?
Yes, we talked about this, I think, in the November meeting with some actual numbers. So I don't have them in front of me this month, but we can
Ish.
certainly, we had about 40 people, yeah,
Oh,
on the,
super.
on the HSA. So we had a pretty good for the first year. I think we had a good turnout. And really one of the big reasons to add that plan was we had a lot of requests from new employees coming in. They had existing HSA balances from previous employers. It was a system they were very comfortable and familiar with. It's very common in the private sector to have HSA plans. And I think adding that option in was a big draw for some of our new employees coming on.
And folks, I know you're going to look at that statement and say, duh. Well, you know, we were doing this manually on paper yes or no, before we instituted the electronic benefits program, which we were way out on a limb on. And now just a few years later, we're like, well, haven't you always done it this way? No, we didn't. This is huge to be able to offer this. So
We've been trying to streamline the plan offerings over the last couple of years since we've gone self-insured. So we did leave IPBC in 2019. 2020 was our first year being self-insured. So we've been, you know, we don't want to do too many changes at once, but this year, not only did we add the HSA plan, but we used to have a union and non-union plan. Way back when the county wanted to increase the emergency room copay. But the unions did not agree to that. So that's how we ended up with two separate plans. The main difference between them was that copay for the emergency room. So we have eliminated the non-union plan and put it back to the same parameters as what we are offering our union employees, which is $250 deductible for the emergency room instead of $500. So that is now all employees on the same plan, whether they are union or non-union, which the slight difference that might make to the county is definitely saved in administrative costs and has enabled us to add additional plans.
thanks so much.
Question, Mr. Chair. So a question and an offer, I guess. I'm curious because about a little over 1,000 of the employees of the 1,300 or so-ish, is the 1,300 an eligible number, by the way?
That's a total number. So some of those employees might be part-time and might be part-time eligible, but then they'd have to pay the full balance. The county wouldn't kick anything in. Quite expensive if the county's not paying their portion. And as well as part-time people below 20 hours that are not eligible.
Right.
So
You happen to know roughly what the eligible is?
I have not run that number recently, but I can
The
check.
only reason I ask is I'm curious, that's a potential liability. So people, for some reason of those eligible, are participating elsewhere or have no coverage or whatever, Obamacare. My question or concern might be if those people ever, for outside reasons, are pushed into our plan because they don't have that option or the options on the outside are not that good anymore, we may see an additional liability that we didn't expect before. So just, curious about that. My offer is, I think the HSA is phenomenal. And if I wasn't so old, I would be participating in it because I'm not eligible for it. Anybody on Social Security, by the way, cannot have participate in an HSA. But at the other point, I'd be glad to do whatever sales in the future for the HSA because it is beyond its healthcare applicability. It is the best retirement savings vehicle on the planet. It blows a Roth, sorry, Bill. It blows a Roth away, not you, but the other plan. And at any rate, I'd be glad to help people understand that because when they see it, it's just like dump whatever you can into that thing because you'll never have a better retirement savings than that.
And we did try to offer webinars with our broker to explain the HSA plan and the advantages. So we did offer a couple of those prior to open enrollment to kind of help explain it to people. that maybe aren't familiar with how an HSA works. The county does kick a good amount into that each year for the employees on that plan. So someone who's relatively healthy will be banking money for retirement each year. And it's, it's a huge advantage to those otherwise very healthy employees.
Thank you, Jamie. The Assured Partners reports?
So if you want to go forward to the Assured Partners reports and go one more forward.
Folks, these are homegrown. We struggle to extract data from all variable points that we then can make decisions based upon. If you see something, and you won't today, it's overwhelming, but over the next few months, if you say, you know what, I think it would be useful if we could track X, let us know so we can find a way to build it in to get these.
One thing that these reports, and I'm just going to go into, since, we have a couple of new members here and just kind of explain these reports. We have these all the way back to 2020 when we started being self-insured. And they give a good visual as to what our expenses versus revenues are. So when you see that amount in the upper left, that's the total for the year, the amount that went into the reserve or back out. So in 2022, we did intentionally try to draw down the reserve a little bit. We had picked 9 million and then we went, well, we want to do between 25 and 50%. And we were a little over 50%. So we actually intentionally drew off of reserve by keeping rates low. That is something that, I was just kind of explaining in that earlier conversation. That would be how we would actually draw out of that reserve. So you can see the red number at the top would be our total expenses. And then the green number is the amount that was put into the health insurance fund from county and employee contributions. So the graph gives a good visual of where we sat in relationship to that. That orange number is always something I kind of try to draw everybody to. That is prescription claims. That is a huge driving factor of our health insurance costs. And we are self-insured, so we can certainly set our own. We have a very premium formulary right now where we do pay for just about anything that people need, but that's something that can kind of stand out a little bit. So that's a good one to keep an eye on because that is a big driving factor of our costs. So this was 2022. If you want to go forward one slide, then we would have 2023. So as you can see, we put money back into reserve there. And then one more for 2024. So this isn't final. Understand that when we get those 6 months back, those claims that run out for 6 months, those come back in this report to the month in which they were occurred. So these actually can change a little bit.
Look at the swing on those though. From 350,000 to 720,000. Yeah, I mean, that's
a lot of the
prescription
new
drugs in a month.
Yeah, a lot of the new therapy type drugs. One of the things that we track is a total number of people taking certain high cost drugs. Certain drugs cost upwards of $10,000 a month to the plan. So that's a tricky one. So that's one of our big fluctuating numbers.
When we go out to shop this, one of the biggest factors that in a word that you'll become accustomed to is disruption. And the employees of the county, being a self-insured fund, are extremely sensitive to disruption. Department heads, staff, they don't want to see, hey, listen, we've tweaked the formulary and now your diabetic drug or your, whatever. And I use diabetic. I'm a diabetic. I pronounce that. So I'll pick on myself. That drug's no longer covered. Your injection's not covered. Your finger prick isn't, whatever. That word disruption is something that ripples around here from staff to unions that we need to always be consistent with. When you look at the sheets that Jamie's going to send you, you will see that Blue Cross Blue Shield was not the least expensive carrier. But the employees made it loud and clear that they are not interested in the least expensive carrier. And if they need to be charged a little bit more, they would rather have this carrier. At some point, we need to look at that as a county, again, and as we're getting more sophisticated in this, but that word disruption is huge and this is unusual for me because that's a $300,000 swing on prescriptions alone. That's wow.
And understand when we give a disruption number, we may say there's, 97% similarity, but understand to the 3% of people that are experiencing a disruption, it's everything.
Life-changing.
It's healthcare. It's a very sensitive thing for
Hey,
everyone.
John, I see you. Hang on.
And
And
so-
Jamie, couldn't this be as simple as something within the formulary said, hey, we can now do a 90-day instead of a 30-day. And that's where the cost is coming in and it's going to level off. That's why maybe some are lower, some are higher, or that had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
I don't think that probably has anything to do with it.
John?
Yes, thank you. So capitation, even though the spelling's a little off, I'm assuming that refers to the capitated expenses going towards HMOs?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand what capitation means? We pay a set amount to the HMO doctors each and every month, whether they see a patient or not. And that's why they participate in the plan. Pretty good, huh?
It is very good. You're correct. Any other questions on these reports before we move on? So we do have these in here every month. Depending on how much business we have, we don't always go into detail on them, but always available to answer questions on them and just make sure you know that these are the kinds of things that we are looking at and the trends that we review when we set our rates each year.
So Jamie, in the upper left-hand corner on that slide, amount toward reserve, is our goal for that to be zero?
That depends. Each year you want to determine what you want your reserve balance target to be, and then we may be adding or taking from reserve. So when we set the rates, determining if we want to add or take from reserve. So, for 2024, our costs went up, so we needed to add a little to stay in that. But we weren't intending to add $1 million. So, but you never really know how much you're going to spend. So it's
Is the
a
committee
guessing game.
okay with just seeing the aggregate figure rather than a month to month? I mean, John?
I think that makes sense. It might be interesting to see, we know how much you're adding, what the target was, so this is what we add, this is what we subtract on this sheet to see the target.
We can try to do
Office
that.
is
I'll
on
have
the
to talk
second
to.
floor, just go right up the stairs. It's
I'll check with Kathy on that. The way that the auditors balance the health insurance fund and everything, I don't know that we have monthly access to that in an accurate way. But I will check and see if she can do that. But the surplus and deficit per month is the bottom line of that report. So if you want to see what was added or taken away in any given month, that bottom line of those figures would give you that amount.
Let's go on to the next.
So the next is the monthly staff and applicant changes. Again, for the new people on the committee, I'll just kind of explain these reports a little bit. So this would be for the previous month. So we have the number of people that applied, particularly as the job market changes. Sometimes we see these numbers go down or up, and it kind of helps us review each month just a gauge of our positions being responded to. If they aren't, how are we addressing that? So we just include this here in terms of our people coming in and applying for our positions, and at what rate. And if you want to keep going forward, another slide, one more. And then we also put all our new hires on here and the position they were hired for. Just to kind of keep an eye on, again, we'll also have terminations on here so you can see how our staff is growing or shrinking based on new hires versus terminations. So if you want to go down to
One of the, oftentimes, you guys will be asked to make the jump from the election trail into reality. And some of the hyperbole that's out there that is oftentimes we hear, Kane County has a big turnover problem. Kane County, doesn't pay enough to their people. Kane County doesn't. Well, this is the actual data point right here. And I don't know that those statements are necessarily true. And And to that challenge, Deb, I think we said, maybe 18 months ago, could we start doing things such as exit interviews to try and figure out, why are you leaving? Is it because of money? Did you leave the public sector to go to the private sector? Did you go to another county because they paid more? Blah, 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 blah. And, you know, people who have left us have, in my opinion, have been very candid with what's going on and why they've left. If there's terminations, we can find a way to, you know, to address, you know, maybe we need to do some more educational training. But that all falls within here. And I don't believe that we've ever been significantly out of any tolerance on this compared to our brethren, meaning our peer group would be other counties of our size. I think that we've always been pretty much in there, but I will, you know, welcome you guys on board and tell you our charge is to figure out where those problems are and how can we address those, whether that's the state's attorney's office calling saying, hey, I'm having trouble hiring people because you don't give benefits until 1 month past this date and blah, 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 blah. And I'm losing applicants because their benefits don't start soon enough. Jamie, Christine, how can we address that to shorten that time frame? You know, little things like that, that without that data, we can't be effective in making change. And so we try to stay on top of that within our guidelines and to the best of our ability that our other 24 brethren have given us at the board level to come down and say, this is the rules you get to play within, you know, do the best you can. So Deb, am I being historian? Am I being fair on my statements here? Okay.
If you want to go to page 32, we do have the graph in there from our exit interviews that shows just the responses we get. So this is just county departments. We don't send this to elected offices. So this is just your county departments. The elected offices do keep their own records and didn't want to participate in this, but when a county employee leaves, when they resign, we send them an invitation to do an exit interview, which they can just select buttons and submit a survey, or they can click on it to contact us for an in-person exit interview. So this is the results from those that take the survey.
What was the sampling size of this survey? Do you know?
So this one, I think, was about 108. I sent out some detailed information after the November committee upon request, and I think it was just over 100.
Okay. And again, for those new to the electorate, it still to this date is difficult for me to understand that while we have 1,300 employees across the county, as our 24-member body, we can only affect the departments that are within the county. The elected offices, the sheriff, the state's attorney's office, et cetera, they have internal control. We don't control them. We can affect change within the departments, but not within the offices. And if you can, in your mind, begin a discriminator there, I find that much easier to, wait, I'm sorry, are you a department? Are you an office? Because we can't affect, all we can do is suggest. And that becomes a little bit of a blurry line sometimes, but unless you realize what the conversation is, it's really easy to get a little lost in there. At least for me, Mr. Roth.
Roth here, I had some questions. Jamie, you said there was 108. Over what time period was that?
That would be starting when this committee asked us to start doing it, which I believe was December of 22.
Okay, so it's accumulative. I would think we'd want to maybe do it for certain periods to see is the trend going up or down. And also maybe break it up by department, because if we have, you may not, you know, and then the other question part of that is, are there people where we didn't get any reasons, you know, a percent, like, I don't know if that's in here, like no response or not, you know, if we had 100 people, but we had 200 people left. Okay, have 50% are telling us why.
I think we checked in when we discussed this in November, and I
Yeah.
think it was about a third was our response rate, was about a
Okay.
third of people.
Okay.
And we do not include those that did not respond anywhere in here,
Okay.
since we don't have any data from them.
Right.
And
But-
Sonia, it was so much fun sitting on this committee as we were trying to come out of COVID and say, oh, at what point are we asking employees to come back to the office? At what point, hey, Roger, does everybody have their laptop computers and how does that work? And I mean,
Yeah.
those were some trying times. And so I think, I don't want to use the word normal, but we're getting back to some historical
Yeah.
Bill, that I think,
I would
I
agree.
think it was skewed. You know
And
what I mean?
actually, out in the real world, a lot of corporations are saying, all right, work from home isn't as rosy as they want it to be.
So.
Mr. Chair, this is Caius. Was this before and after the external equity study so that,
It really
Or-
came in kind of at the tail end of it, so it's a little before and then after, so it kind of came in at
Just
the
a
tail
correction, I
end.
don't think
Let-
we've done the external. We've done.
Oh,
the
I mean,
internal, you
internal.
mean,
I meant the
correct.
internal.
Okay.
Yeah, the internal. Because if it is, I think there's, at least my impression was there was a pretty big distinction about before we balanced the equity and afterwards. So if it
Yeah.
includes both. of them.
We actually have broken it down in time periods, and it actually doesn't change a whole lot, not a lot. And we also don't want to reduce the sample size by breaking it down by department in a short time period, because we do promise these people confidentiality and that we only review it in terms of aggregate data with the departments, just to make sure that they're giving us an honest.
So what Board
result.
Member Kyles is mentioning is, we did commission a study at the request of the board saying, how do we compare across the county? And we invited offices to participate along with the departments to say, if we've reclassified an entry-level receptionist, that person should be making this amount every place across the county. This department shouldn't be paying this while this department is paying this. And it went as far as engineers. If you're an engineer that's at KDOT and you're an engineer that's at IT and you're an engineer that's at water with Jody, how do we grade those and make sure that we're being equitable internally? And there's a suggestion that the follow-up study to that would be, let me rephrase it, before we leave that. We found some really shocking things, and there was some really low-hanging fruit that we made an immediate correction for those people. We also said, wow, there's some people that are really handsomely, taken care of. We didn't penalize anybody, but we raised the low-hanging fruit up that we thought needed. We put that out a 3-year plan to correct those that we thought needed correction that were within the middle. And then we sort of set a plan saying, we should look at an external. How does this county compare to our peer group? That didn't go forward because of obvious budget constraints. That would be terrible to come back and say, hey, here's what we found, but y'all don't have the money to pay what you owe now, and we need an additional, we need to finish our funding and decide how we're doing things financially, and then go back out and say, okay, now I believe we should be looking at this. But Chris, to your point, I mean, and I know it was just a slip, but we can't forget that that next step is out there, it is lurking, and we need to take it as soon as, okay, election's over, now get into the new budget cycle, there's a referendum out there, but that's coming on. We need to take those steps before we move forward, in my opinion. And if you ask 24 of us, we'll have 24 opinions, so, anyhow, sorry, James.
And
Chris, go ahead.
while we're on that, maybe the topic about the Blue Cross Blue Shield, really, for those of you that are just getting on the board, or even when I started with Cliff, it was 6 years ago, we were really, I know I felt like we were being held hostage by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the kind of work that Cliff did and with Assured Partners really just blew all of the scum off the top of the water. You could see right down into the whole thing. They really brought us a long ways. You wouldn't even recognize what we were going through as a county trying to get health insurance, and the procedures that we used, and this absolutely great data we get. So
Thank you.
kudos.
Thank you. Jamie, move.
The next set of reports are workers' comp reports, and honestly, these are new for fiscal year 25, so there's only 1 month of data in them, so there's not a whole lot to look at here. I can
Do you
bring
have
it back.
anything historical? Only because we had brought this up at the board yesterday, or maybe it was an executive session. But just to kind of show the historical trends, and if we can, if I could set the table on this from a liability perspective, we had some dark years where we paid some ginormous claims and we became on the blacklist. No carrier of the 50 carriers that we went out to market, 47 of them said, we don't even want to insure you guys. And so our broker said, great, of the 3, you know what, here you go. We also had some problems within our work comp side. It was not our partners, our external professional partners, but when we turned to them and said, hey, listen, you know, I kind of came back to you guys and said, we need to spend $1 to save $1. We need some additional staff that I believe will bear fruit. And we put on some additional claim assistance. We reinforced our relationship with maybe the sheriff's office, which is a bulk of the claims come from the jails and the sheriff's office. That's just inherent to who they are, and what they do for a living. But Ron's team couldn't have been more supportive in meeting with us and saying, hey, listen, you know, tell us what we can do. Well, what do we know? We'll bring in somebody smart enough to say, help us with this. And the results have been incredible. And for you new to the board, you saw, it's unfortunate, and I say this all the time, that the day before our committee meeting, you get to see the good, bad, and the ugly. And then the next day we come in and go, hey, look at how good we're doing. Yeah, you know what? I get it. It's like counterintuitive, but we're really doing well, and don't let what you heard in executive session, you know, get you down. You have to look at, Deb, am I saying that even remotely? You know, so Jamie, go ahead, kind of.
So as you can see, we do have some historical, but understand that claims from last year and the year before are still incurring costs. So it's pretty rare for, you know, if someone has a serious injury, we may be getting bills adding to that policy period for years after the injury, right through to whatever, you know, final payout there might be. If there's a settlement or something like that, those go back into their policy period. So, you know, this year looks low because there's only 1 month in it and bills probably haven't been rolling in for that yet. Last year, again, looks really low compared to the previous year, but that's because it's not done incurring balances. So they continue to change as time goes on. We have, you know, we tried to take care of the older ones, get them settled and finalized so that those years stop growing, but sometimes they last a long time. So we do have some old ones as well, but if you want to look at page 37.
Question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Is there a statute of limitations on those claims?
So there's a statute of limitations of when they can file a claim after an injury. But these are claims that have been filed and they're actively receiving medical care, and there is no end to those if they are still receiving medical care for that injury. And when we settle them, we often settle them with open medical, which means if they have new medical costs associated with that. So you'll hear when you hear about those talked about in executive session that sometimes they're with open medical. If it's a fully resolved, we might be able to close them completely, and that's always the goal, or to give them a settlement in lieu of open medical.
Any other questions on these? Thanks so much.
And the last thing we do have on here, this is just a once a year thing. We have the ethics advisor report. And just so everyone knows, our current ethics advisor, former Judge Grant Wagner, is retiring, and he has let us know that he will be ending his time with us as ethics advisor, but he's given us several months of notice. So the county will be going through the process of finding a new ethics advisor. But as is the current policy. Once a year, he does give us a report. That includes the inquiries that he's had, and we share those with this committee. It doesn't go beyond this committee. It's not something that needs passage by the board or anything. It's just for informational purposes, shared with the committee as to what calls he did receive throughout the year.
Can you hold that screen right there, please? Our ethics advisor is a volunteer basis. Is that the number of claims that, or complaints, I'm sorry, that he handled this year?
Yeah, so he didn't get any like public complaints that there was an ethics violation or anything like that.
Guys,
Yes.
we do really well with this. I mean, please understand, and there was some notion that I heard in the ether that maybe if we have to find somebody that we need to pay a stipend to induce somebody to come on board.
He is paid
he
by
is?
the hour. Yes. That was regarding
I'm
the
sorry.
ethics commission that you're referring to.
Yes.
The ethics
you.
advisor is paid, so he charges by the hour for the time that he spends researching issues. So we pay just an actual cost to him.
Okay, but there's, and on the advisory, help me out, because I'm now going to misstate, so.
So we, about a year ago, the board passed a change at the advice of, and with the help of the state's attorney to write it, a change in the ethics ordinance, establishing an ethics commission. So those members have not been appointed yet. It'll be on the chairman with the advice and consent of the board to appoint people to the ethics commission. It takes some of the pressure off of in our ethics ordinance. The commission is what is recommended by the state and is a common way. Most of our surrounding counties have an ethics commission. The duties of the ethics commission were partially shared by the state's attorney's office, which could, if there was a complaint in the state's attorney's office, be some kind of a conflict. So that is one of the reasons that having a separate ethics commission is very helpful. We've never had that come up, and we hope it never does, but it's good to have this separate commission established in case there were a complaint of that nature.
But to give some credibility is not the word, to give some context to the amount of work that commission does, we're in really good shape. I mean, that was a housekeeping issue suggested by the state. That was not a, wow, we're overburdened with ethics complaints, not in any way, shape, or form, and I want to make sure that the committee understands that.
Yes, we never had an issue come up that required an ethics commission. It was just good to have it established so that should something come up, we have that in place already.
So,
Chris?
so have there been any referrals to that commission then?
No, we don't have anyone on that commission
Not
yet. The
even
chairman
staff
hasn't,
yet.
So,
appointed it yet.
so which comes first then, the commission or the complaint?
You know what?
Uh,
Well, now I believe, are we in a position where we have no one?
Well,
Because he
Grant
just
Wagner,
resigned and we don't have a commission in place. Should we be doing something?
Grant Wagner is staying on until April, or until such time as someone is appointed in his place. So he's given us plenty of notice. The chairman's been notified, and she has it on her list of things that she is getting started to find someone to replace both the ethics advisor as well as appoint the commission.
Okay, super.
So we don't have any examples of anything that would have, like an example of what would have been referred to either the judge or the commission?
I think we had one a
Mm.
couple years ago, and Chris, I can't even tell you what it was.
Any kind of anything in the ethics ordinance, if there was someone believed that someone was in violation of it. For example, ethics has to do with, it includes like if a family member is a vendor to the county, for example, or
Okay.
something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
what I
And
was
if
looking for,
someone,
examples like,
right, if someone wanted to make a complaint, the ethics advisor, his main function is to provide advice to people for interpretation of that ordinance.
If you all have anything on this, feel free, as they shake their head and say no. Okay,
So he provides advice. So you'll see if you want to read through this, you can read the types of inquiries he has taken and what he has done in regards to them. Right now, if there were an actual complaint, it would go to the state's attorney's office to investigate. That was the original. And then that's what the commission would now do instead.
Chris, did answer your question?
yeah, I think so.
Bill?
Roth here. Jamie, you said, Mr. Wagner is paid, but there's no complaint. So is he paid a minimum or?
No, he is paid by the hour for actual research he does. So these items that he has listed above, there's no formal complaint filed that required research into
Okay,
facts.
so,
But he did provide advice a number of times to people who reached out to him, researched the ordinance and provided that advice. So we pay by the hour for that.
okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay, if that, and Jamie, does that end your reports? Or you have monthly compliance?
The only other report in there is the sexual harassment training, which it's January. So you probably have already restarted receiving your barrage of emails reminding you to do that. We actually have 248 people who have already done it. So,
Yay.
you know, if you don't like those emails, just take your training real quick and you'll stop getting them.
And for the new members, with the new electronic benefits system, we also introduced the ability to do some of this online training, which in the past was never available. Sexual harassment was just one that we had instituted. COVID occurred. We didn't do much more past that, but we have a platform. Sometimes a cultural change takes a little bit to institute and people to embrace. And I think people are now no longer afraid of doing this webinar online. And I think COVID has introduced Zoom, Teams, webinars as a generally accepted method of disseminating information. And we have a platform to do it as is required. Is that fair?
Yes, if an employee is on a county computer and they use the link that is provided, it will automatically record their completion once they complete the video and put their initials on it. Those who don't have a county network computer can watch it and sign a form for us.
Tarver, you okay out there?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Here we go. Okay. I don't believe we have anything on for old business at this time. New business, I think we have two housekeeping items and then just a brief discussion. Housekeeping item number one is authorizing the number of procurement cards issued to the Human Resources Department and each of their transaction limits. Is that correct, Jamie?
Yes, this is just something we have to do once a year for the Auditor Finance Department. No changes. We still just have the one card issued to our department.
Mr. Linder, could I get a motion and Deb a second?
Sure. I'll move acceptance.
Alan second.
Alan seconds. Any discussion on this? Please call the roll.
Allen,
Alan, I.
Garcia,
Garcia, I.
Gripe,
Gripe, yes.
Tarver,
Carver, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Sturgis.
Surges, yes. Resolution number two, amending the Personnel Policy Handbook section regarding absences and tardiness. Mr. Linder, if you would motion that so we can go into discussion.
Sure. I will move adoption of the resolution amending personnel policy handbook section regarding absences and tardiness.
Ms. Garcia,
I second.
there we go. Jamie, would you like to introduce that for us?
The policy was attached. I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to review it and have any questions. We did have a couple of departments come to us with some struggles they're having with managing absenteeism and tardiness, and there wasn't really a lot of policy support in the handbook. You'll find that when it comes to policies that relate to direct management of the employees, a lot of times we avoid making a county-wide policy because our departments vary so much in the way they function. But this is endeavors to be clear and still provide the necessary flexibility for our departments to make their individual decisions for how they want to manage their staff. So it addresses tardiness and in an excused and unexcused manner, which still allows the department to excuse any attendance issues that they feel is well documented and acceptable for their staffing, and still address it in cases where it's patterned or excessive and regular. So we just tried to, we didn't really have much in the way of policy before. Ms. Juby was very helpful in helping us vet through this policy, and the departments all provided feedback as well.
So when you two came on, they handed you a big old binder of gobbledygook. And then they said, oh, by the way, here's a link to all the other stuff. yeah, in a perfect world, everything is codified and wonderful. But in the reality, we might do something at the board level and make a suggestion and expect this or do that, but it never trickled all the way down to get updated. We've been working under assumptions, well, this is the way we have always done it. And then somebody goes, oh, wait, but it's in conflict. And usually it's Juby saying, hey, it's in conflict with this or something. And we just have to go back and kind of fix it. You'll see a lot of that. We call that housekeeping items. They're not controversial. It's just an oops, and let's clarify this because somebody asked a question and it's not really stated properly, or maybe it was from 20 years ago and technology has changed or something like that. So you'll see these often. Yes, sir.
I don't know about Sonia, but for the record, I never got a binder. So
We don't provide a printed copy just for the sake of paper. It's available.
How old I am, John.
That's the olden days. The olden days, we got the, that's the notebook I carry in, the little black one was the orientation book.
You probably got a link and a form to sign. And it is available publicly on our website as well as on our internal page. So it should be accessible to everyone. And along that same vein, just in reviewing our handbook, we have a lot of updating to do. There are a lot of our policies that kind of contradict each other or make it unclear. And I'd like to, with the committee's permission, make it a point this year to go through properly organized. So there would be a lot of changes associated with that. And I know it's a lot of reading for everyone to go through and do a lot of changes. So we try to do these one at a time, but it really needs a lot of work. There are some very old policies and ones in places people would never think to look to them. They're not titled well to help people find the information they need. We get a lot of questions from departments. Do we have a policy on this? And we do. It just had a title that didn't make sense for what it is, so they never saw it. So I think that it's becoming more and more important. And I think I would like to include it as an action item. But again, it would be a lot for this committee to review as well. It's a large document, and I would probably need some assistance from some board members to help with that review process.
We're at 27 minutes. We're going to need 10 minutes to go to executive session. We have one or two items to get through yet, just to calibrate. But John, your predecessor, I believe, was Mark Davist. And you guys will remember one of the first committee meetings that we had, we were trying to fix something and Mark said, I'll dive in on that. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? It was so complex that we realized doing this in mass is not the way to go. Breaking it down to subsections was the only way, eat an elephant one bite at a time. Yeah, that was the only way to do it. Mark spent 6 months, came back and threw the binder down and said, nope, ain't gonna happen that way. And so we kind of learned the hard way. And yes, because one department will say this and not inform the other department, and then all of a sudden you have a conflicted, well, but the board said to do this. Well, but we didn't update the thing from 1978, and now it needs, but bottom line is we just need to fix it and move forward as a housekeeper.
How often do we look at the handbooks?
So we really don't have a set, let's review the whole handbook because as Mr. Surges said, it's a large document. So what we've been doing is we have updated, I've picked the ones most in need of update and updated 4 or 5 a year. But there are so many in there and we're having more and more problems with that. So I think taking it in a couple policies at a time chunks would be more feasible. So for example, we could do all of our benefit time policies at once and go through all the sick vacation and all that and do those as a chunk, several, and break it into maybe 5 or 6 highlighted pieces and bring them forward like that to get through it in a better time frame.
And we can assign liaisons to that, John, if you want to, if Leslie want to jump in, if Mike want to jump in, hey, I'm really interested in this. Super, work with Jamie and let's, bring it forward.
yeah, I'll volunteer to help however you want.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Just sort of a side comment. The county has been very poor in documentation. If you look at the county code, there are so many things that we do sideways from what the county code says we should, because we haven't taken the time to do a total review and take the antiquated stuff out, adjust the things that we just do differently. And then the personnel policies is another example. There are probably 10 other examples around the county of things that, we just need to be more conscious about keeping things current.
It ain't sexy. We just need to do it. So, yeah. Okay. I wanted to, this next item, I want to just give a little, I want to just spend 5 minutes on it and I just want
Did
to.
you want to take a vote on that
Oh,
policy?
I'm so sorry. Absolutely. Could you please call the roll on that? My apologies.
Allen,
Allen, I.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gripe,
Right, absolute.
Tarver.
Bill had to leave.
Thank you. Linder,
Linda, yes.
Surges.
Yes. And Jamie, that would be the proverbial 2x4 upside the head. Thank you so very much. So, item 10C, again, this is just something I want to spend a really brief amount of time on, but I do want to preface this. I wanted to open a small discussion on one of our departments on something that has that I just think needs to be reviewed. But I want to preface this by saying, per my conversation with Madam Chair, this is not a performance review of the individuals involved. This borderlines stepping on the toes of another committee. But I'm looking at this as more of a global perspective, not as an individual perspective. And I reached out to Chris Cayos. I reached out to Roger and said, hi, can you guys both be here? Because I don't want to do this in a vacuum. And for those that know me, I will never torpedo anybody. I will always tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I have a question. I don't understand something. But in this particular case, I just wanted to reach out and say, I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm seeing a potential problem that might need a little bit of WD-40 and where do we go with that? So Christine, did you make copies of these? Okay, if we can just pass these around.
Yep, I already did.
Oh, you already did?
Yep.
Okay, so I also am a big believer in that game that we all played as kids, Telephone, where Mike Linder started it and then he told Sonia and then told Cliff and then told Deb. And by the time it got around, Mike started with peanut butter and then it was chop suey by the time we got done. I don't want to play that game. So I put it in writing and said, these were my thoughts and concerns. There's nothing that says anything about an individual. It is just, we took action a couple years ago when we were having a couple of problems to consolidate two departments, but they were big departments. They're great, big, huge departments. And we put, yesterday I made the comment in front of everybody that Carl Shadle, in my opinion, reaches that threshold of the best and the brightest. Well, Roger Fonstock equally reaches that threshold. But at some point you have to ask, dude, how many straws can you put in Roger's back and ask him to keep carrying it when the problem is so much broader than maybe one person should be looking at? And so I just wanted to revisit to say, has the experiment that we tried a few years back of combining this worked? And would Chris and the committee, his committee, look back and say, hey, you're right. Maybe it didn't work. Maybe there is a better way. But on these, we have two key people that have left. Roger, how you sleep at night, God bless you, because this is a lot of responsibility. We're talking about a budget of, $21 million between the department's budget and the capital projects budget. We are talking about innumerable employees that respond to the director. It just gets to be a bit much. And so I just wanted to reach out and begin some dialogue on that and open it formally, just to kind of get a flavor. And if the flavor of this committee is shut up and leave it alone, A-okay. If the flavor is we ran an experiment, then maybe I would go to their committee and say, hey, how are you guys feeling about this? And how can we, as human resources, how can we help? One of the goals that we had last year, one of the, I don't want to use the term shortcomings, but goals, I think is the right word, was to say, we would like human resources to become an active participant in helping people, in helping departments staff where is needed. Rather than each department doing it on their own, you know, we have resources and people that are trained to do it, but aren't reaching out. So to use your staff that says, here's a report of people who left. Yeah, great. I want the report that says, how are you helping staff these things that we don't have? How do we get from here to where we want to be? And that's kind of a new venture for us. That's kind of something that's a bit of a cultural change for us. And I didn't know where to start that dialogue. You know, Madam Chair called me and said, you know, what hornet's nest are you trying to ruffle? Roger, I've never ruffled anything with you. If I've ever had a question, I've called you and you returned the call. Chris Cayos, I mean, extremely strong Democrat, extremely strong Republican. I don't know. Chris and I talk 3 times a week. We call each other immediately. There's no,
Call and yell at each other, I think.
oh, we don't yell, but you know, yeah, I mean, we're in constant communication, at least at the north end. Him, I, and Jarrett work extremely well together. So that's not the case. And this wasn't meant to be a threat. It is truly just a reach out to say, we made a conscious effort a few years back, and I don't know that if it's working or running as smoothly, and that's nobody's fault. It might just be a structural component of saying, how should we approach this, and should we approach it differently? And from a structural perspective at the human resources level to say, how would you all do it professionally, not politically, professionally? How would you do it? And how have we reached out to that department head, that committee, to say, what can we be doing to help, instead of kind of sitting back and just accepting and criticizing or saying, oh golly, that just didn't, well, what can we do to be proactive? So is that comment coming out in the positive light that it's meant to, not in a threatening, Raj, does that step on your toes in any way? I don't think so. I mean, how can we help? Chris?
Just a quick response. That was a joke about the yelling part. Sorry. Because we've always discussed things amicably. Certainly, because our committee meets right after yours, I think that we would all welcome, Roger and the committee would welcome any input, especially if there's any complaints, or because there's a few things listed in here, but I'm not sure exactly where they originate from. So if you are aware of a department or an elected that has an issue with building management or IT, I think is a really good place to start. And certainly we're welcome. We're welcoming, and we have a review of our capital projects, I think, coming up in our next meeting right after this, as well as we'll be dealing with staffing situations in that meeting as well. So,
and again, for these
stick around, Cliff.
Yeah, no,
You're
for
welcome.
these staffing situations, you know, I would hate to find out that it's just a matter of money. We just don't pay enough. You know, but they would tell us that. They might say, hey, listen, educationally, we just don't have the right people. We're not requiring the right degrees to bring those candidates in. Jamie, how do we reach those people with those degrees that shouldn't be just the department head's responsibility. They should be coming to they should have resources available to them to say, we not only want to bring a person in, but we want to continue to educate them so that they stay. And there are those people that say, we don't want Kane County to be a training ground for other people. I don't know. I don't know how you don't educate your people and build them to be better. Leslie.
Thank you for letting me speak in a non-committee. I think that you're confusing 2 different ideas. I thought the intent of this was to determine whether we needed to have a single job overseeing 2 departments, and now you're talking about getting quality people in working. And I think those are 2 different things. That's my understanding that this particular memo addresses. We need to look back to see if the position we created was actually working. I think that to mix in, are we paying enough people? Are we going through another process to keep employees? I think is mixing up what particular thing is trying to.
Thank you. I think I perceive it as an iteration. To say that it's not working doesn't solve it.
I don't know that this
To
is
say that,
saying
to
it's
say that
not
it is
working.
or it's not, I'm
I
sorry.
think what this is saying is did it do we have the data point to show that it did what we wanted it to do? Did we have an expectation that was unrealistic? Or do we just go back now that we've learned over this 2 years? Do we just go back and redefine maybe the two positions? That was my understanding of this memo, but I wasn't,
You're not wrong.
Okay.
I don't want to tap dance around that,
Okay.
but let's say that that was correct and you went to the next step.
Well,
How do we assist to do that without introducing an entire new branch, if you will, or what's the word I'm looking for? Array of activities for the Human Resources Department to help staff.
yeah, I think that's a different thing, as having human resources actively working to fill positions for various departments, as opposed to deciding whether you need oversight of two departments by another individual. And I think if you confuse those, it will muddy the waters. I don't see complaints in this letter. I don't see, well, it's not working, this department or that department, or anything about money. I see it as philosophically, do we have the data that shows us this was successful or not successful? And if the data is dependent on whether we paid people very well, I believe that the two people on the bottom of this were compensated very well. So I don't think compensation had anything to do with them not being here. So I'm just saying, for me, because I'm a policy person, I would like to see one thing discussed. And if there's other things that come from it, that's fine, but I wouldn't want the other things to commingle with it so that we couldn't decide. Now, once we decide, then it's okay to go to the next.
Understood.
You know.
Because of my deep respect for you, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. Where would this be discussed? At this committee or at that committee?
Well,
I don't know that.
well, seeing how the chair is raising his hand, can I answer before he answers,
I
or?
think I certainly appreciate the comments. I believe more appropriately, since you're talking about two departments or a single department, building management, reports to the administration committee, we would take these comments and then bring it up in our committee, because we don't want you to run any longer than you have to, because that's going to slow us
Yeah,
down too,
and
so.
we've got like 1 minute before. So the point was to give this direction. The point, I put this in writing to say, I think we need to give this some direction. If it doesn't belong there, I will march this to where I think it needs, where we think it should go. If it does belong here, great, then let's begin to work on it. But what I don't want to do is ignore it.
No,
What I don't want to do is set it on the shelf.
It
So
shouldn't be
either left
ignored.
or right, doesn't matter. Just let me know.
But it goes to a personnel issue eventually. So yes, the two people report to that committee. Yes, which is true. That's where the conversation should happen, but it cannot be done independently of the overseeing of who does the positions. I mean, the admin committee can't just decide well, maybe we can decide we're going to create a position and hire somebody. I think we have to go through certain steps, and I think this has to go through those same steps. So yes, it should be discussed there, but I do not believe admin has the autonomy to do this.
And we can take, John will acknowledge you, and then we need to get to executive session, but we can take this offline. The point was to introduce and say, give guidance. Yeah, fair? Non-threatening, not pointed, not a performance review, just a conversation. So, okay, John, you had a.
Yeah, real quick. I think you've handled it very well. No negative, but do we need to formally ask administration to do this, or is just the suggestion?
Let's take it offline and then we'll bring it back under old business next meeting. Is that okay?
I will accept this and take it to the committee. I think that's as formal as we need to get. I don't know, does this need to be discussed?
No.
If you don't see us dealing with this, then by all means,
Fair.
either come to us, which I think would be probably more appropriate than discussing it in this meeting, bring it to this committee and or Roger and or Madam Chair to get this thing where the focus I think needs to be, which is probably admin. And then with the, of course, with other departments, just like you said, that admin can't just create things or I think but the appropriate way I think is to bring it in and use it to tie in the rest of the departments that are important to the appropriate way we're going with where admin needs to go. Like, and I think it's the same concern that both of us have, is that we're interested in the betterment of the county here and making things are working properly and we're going in the right direction. And so if there are concerns, I think that's the appropriate way to do it. And then we use the full body of expertise that we have throughout the county, including human services and purchasing, all of those. So I think.
Fair enough. Chris,
Mr.
thank
Chair
you.
Gums,
Ms. Gums?
can you send me that memo? Photo of it
No.
or something for my next meeting?
No. Yes, we'll get it out there.
Thank you, sir.
John, could I have a motion to place reports on file?
Motion to place reports on file by,
Sonia,
Sonia, second.
is that a roll call or all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Sonia, could I have a motion to move to executive session to discuss closed session minutes? Am I accurate on that? Okay, you have 8 minutes. Roll call, second by Mr. Linder. Call the roll to move to executive session.
Allen,
Allen, aye.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gray,
yes.
Tarver is gone, Linder,
Yes.
Sturgis.
Yes.
state's attorney. Listen to the assistant attorneys. That's fine.
You're always welcome. Call us back into, are you ready, IT? Go ahead and call us back into this open session.
Allen,
Alan present?
Garcia,
Garcia.
Gripe,
Right here.
Linder,
Linder here.
Surges.
Surge here. Mr. Gripe, would you read us in for the release of the closed session minutes? What motion do you need, Mr. Assistant State's Attorney?
Just a standard voice vote. To adopt Exhibit A. Motion to adopt Exhibit A.
Motion to adopt.
So moved,
Exhibit A.
Gripe.
Yes.
Second by Garcia, second by Allen, I'm sorry. Any comments on that? Please call the roll.
Okay, Allen,
Alan, I.
Garcia,
Garcia, yes.
Gripe,
Right, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Surges.
Surge, yes. Before we motion for adjournment, please know, I'm extremely respectful of the state's attorney's time, so that when we asked earlier, state's attorney's office's time. So when I asked earlier, is he here for the next meeting? If he wasn't, I would have recommended to move him up in the agenda to get him back to his office. So I appreciate your time. Also, in our very first charge is the 2025 committee goals. One of those is employee appreciation efforts. We'd really be remiss if we didn't take a minute to signify and memorialize that, you know, we have a couple of members that are struggling right now. Hospitalized, including Madam Chair yesterday. And if, for those of you that are, you know, Facebook friends with her, you know, she posted, you know, her arm in the sling, and she did text me last night that she has an ortho appointment this week to look at it, that she did break her wrist. We have State's Attorney Shepro, you know, battling, and, you know, others with concerns. You know, I know that yesterday there was a resident that voiced some opposition to prayer. I am telling you that I stand here today in prayer and blessings for these families as they continue to heal, and that I would hope that everybody, same sentiment.
I would add Mr. Berman too.
Oh, Mr. Berman as well. Yes.
I talked to him yesterday and
He's doing well.
He's doing okay.
Okay, there we go. So with that, Mr. Linder, motion to adjourn.
Do reports on file already?
Yeah, they're on file already.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I would move adjournment.
Second, Miss Allen, all in favor?
We should stay.
No, we're not staying. We are right at 10:30, kids, on the dot. All in favor? Aye. No
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Sure.